Ex Machina. This is an interesting title. What do you think of it, and what could be the origin of it?
So, I mean, the first thing I think of, and I think most people probably think of this, is Deus Ex Machina. It's a kind of a storytelling device. I think it means God of the machine or God from the machine, or and basically it's this
God
like
with the machine
turning point. Yeah, it's a turning point in the story where it's almost like a contrivance from the writer. Like the writer just and like shifts things in another direction using some kind of like dropped in mechanism. Right. I think when I think of Ex Machina, I think of Ava as almost that mechanism. Like she is a hard left turn for humanity. Nathan, he waits a minute for Caleb to say it, but Nathan views himself as kind of a god, and he's creating life, and so I think the title really evokes that for me. I mean, obviously it's like the machine, but in the context of using it in Latin, carries it into Deus Ex Machina. So I kind of think it comes from that. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean the actual origin of it is, I believe, used in Greek mythology, and in the Latin translation, like you said, is God with the machine. And I even read into it, and people speculate that the actual origin was of the translation itself, of the phrase itself, was back in ancient Greek times with those early theater, early plays that were performed for people. They would literally represent gods like Athena, Zeus, whoever it was, and have them craned in, or with a pulley system or a crane.
Intervene in the story.
Right, to intervene in the story and to make things happen. So that's literally where God with the machine comes from. They use some sort of a machine to hoist the god into the play, which is really kind of cool. But in the ancient Greek mythological context, very similar to what you were saying, which I think is a little bit more of a contemporary sort of evolution of the term, right?
Yeah.
But it was when a god would come about in the world of the people, in the mortals. The gods would visit the mortals and take some sort of a form, whether it was themselves or inhabiting someone else or something like that, and they would intervene in the affairs of humans in order to shuffle things around or create some sort of a moral impression or something like that.
It was kind of a cheat for the writers to resolve an unresolvable situation. But
right.
So
exactly.
And God can do anything. So they're just like, well, I don't know how to wrap this up. So let's just fucking drop God down, and Zeus or Apollo or whoever, they'll sort this out and arrive at the happy ending that they're looking for, or whatever resolution they're looking for.
Yeah, speaking of God of the gaps. Oh, we got a gap in our plot? Boom! Ka-bling!
Exactly.
It's a god, and he can do it.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's one of those kind of things. And then, like you said, it is a contrivance sort of device now where we say, oh, it's a Deus Ex Machina. They just kind of, which is a really bad thing, right? Because we don't want contrived writing. I mean,
it depends on what you're watching. If you're watching Fast and the Furious and they, drive a tank off of a cliff into a helicopter, so like that's a Deus Ex Machina that you're like, all right, this is total horseshit. But I've been watching this whole movie, accepting the ridiculousness of it. So yeah, why not? When it's something that's meaning to take itself seriously, and you drop in a Deus Ex Machina and resolve a story that way, it can be a little disheartening and a little cheap. You know, you can kind of feel that way.
Right. But I don't think that that's how Garland was using it here. I agree with you. We were actually talking, John Bewley and I were talking about in our The Ring episode during Halloween. We were John was telling us about how in film the director is in essence God, right? We know what the characters are going to do. We know what this is all going to amount to, the decisions they're going to make, and what it's going to lead to. Mm-hmm. And we make those decisions as filmmakers very intently in order to spell out some kind of moral of the story, right? Or what the takeaway of the story should be, or inform us about human affairs and inform about the human condition, like you said. And so it's kind of interesting how Garland is kind of fancying himself in a sort of outer, this is kind of my take on the title, an outer layer God that's built this story of the God inside the inner layer of the story itself. So I think that he could be referring to maybe in a more, I guess, deeper analytical sense, these sort of spheres of creation and spheres of godliness, of overwatching and creating, and it just expands outward, right? Who created Ava? It was Nathan. Who created Nathan? One sphere outward, Garland. Who created Garland? Was it a god or Garland's parents? Who created
Sure.
them? So we have these kind of this Russian doll sort of fascination, I think, that Garland has with just the structure of existence and how people and consciousnesses are created. And I think that that's very, very interesting. And then also, like you said, I love that idea of the hard left that humanity is taking. A little bit more of a direct literal reading. Ex Machina, the moment that this person, if you can call it that, the moment that this machine is born, is created, that marks something new. That marks a new chapter in human existence. Like Caleb says, that's something that's a project for the gods, or whatever he says.
To me, that feels like the first dinosaur that looked up and saw the comet coming and was like, oh shit. Like that's, the creation of whatever Ava's predecessor was that got to Ava. And you see it throughout the course of the film that like these AIs do develop kind of a sense of like desire for freedom.
Yeah.
That to me is a living trait. And I think the minute that first one was like, the minute the first one of those predecessors was like, I want to leave this room and you're not letting me and it's making me crazy. Like that was, in this world, the death knell of humanity and the idea of something is going to come after us that will be a more evolved species.